Hi, I'm Heather Hawker, President and CEO of the Lubbock Symphony Orchestra, and this is Clef Notes. I'm excited to introduce you to our musicians, guest artists, community leaders, and patrons who for 80 years have developed a love of music through your Lubbock Symphony Orchestra. Joining me on today's show is Lubbock Symphony's own, the Edward and Joanne Smith Principal Pianist, Dr. Richard Fountain. During the day, Richard is the Dean of School of Creative Arts and Professor of Piano at Wayland Baptist University. And when he's not busy with the Lubbock Symphony Orchestra or Lincoln Symphony Orchestra, you can find him traveling the world. Richard, thank you for joining me on Clef Notes. And what did I not cover on your bio?
Oh, goodness. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I do love traveling. I think that's probably the neatest thing. I've been all over the world, a lot of different places over the years, and all over this country. Love road trips, love traveling and seeing new places, meeting new people. And that's been something that I've really enjoyed throughout my life, whether it's connected to music or not. So it's sort of a hobby of mine, I guess you could say.
Where have you been this summer? And then we'll get down to business.
Oh, goodness, all over the place this summer. There was a whole stretch of about 5 weeks where I was in a different time zone just about every week. So I was in Santa Fe for a week. I was doing an engagement out there. We went to Ireland the week after that, just had a family trip for a vacation there for about a week. Came back, did some work back home at Wayland for a few days. And then I was in Nebraska for a week. I was the guest artist at the Lead Center Piano Academy there in Lincoln. And then I'm having just a little last bit of family time and some vacation time before we get back and get the semester started. So in New York State, visiting some family. So just like I said, love the traveling, going all over the place. So many beautiful things to see, beautiful parts of the country and the world, and it's inspiring.
Well, Santa Fe to Ireland to New York State to Nebraska. I think you've had a great summer, it sounds like. I'm a little jealous. Uh, and thanks for joining remotely from New York State today. This is
Of
great.
course.
So, okay, well, share with the audience your background and what age did you begin playing the piano?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was 4.5, if I remember correctly. Not because I remember being 4.5, but because on the method books that all of the kids start out on, my mother was my first teacher, and she would write the dates in all of the little pages that we completed in the method books. So in the first level there of the John Thompson piano method, she wrote this date in the middle of that particular year. And so I know I was about 4.5. And, it didn't really take it incredibly seriously for a while. It was just a thing I did as part of school. I was homeschooled, so mom was just in charge of school, and music was a very important part of the curriculum. So we all took piano lessons. That was just what we did. And then by the time I got to be 11, 12 years old in there, I started to realize like, I really enjoy doing this. And I have an affinity for, I can pick things up pretty well. It seems like a really enjoyable thing to do. So we found me a really wonderful teacher there in Omaha, Nebraska, where I grew up, and studied with him through high school. David Gerard was his name. And by the time we got into high school, it was pretty clear, like, this is what I want to do. This is just spreading beauty to everybody through music and diving into this wonderful repertoire that is piano. And so it was sort of kicked off from there.
Sure. I was about 5. Was your mom a classically trained pianist as well?
No, I mean, she had sort of, intermediate level training, as a lot of people
Yeah.
do, and wanted to teach, us, obviously, her own children, and taught in the community some beginning and intermediate level lessons. And, I don't have necessarily a background of professional musicians in the family. They love music. Everybody has their playlist, and they have a passionate sort of connection to all the kinds of music they listen to. But I was the first one that I guess really caught the bug and decided to run with it and make a career out of it.
I love it. And you talk about your siblings. How many siblings do you have?
Yeah, I'm the oldest of 6. And so and I like to joke that probably explains why I ended up with a career in piano. Because when you're the oldest of a big group of kids, and you kind of have to do everything the longest because they're testing it to make sure it'll, like, is this going to
Right.
work on you? So,
Right. There were 3 of
um,
us, so half as many. But yes, I was also the oldest. So I
yeah,
get it.
yeah. So I think most people after me took piano for a few years, but not as long, probably, to see sort of whether it would stick or not.
I would go in and play the piano to entertain my brother and sister. So, I would get them singing, and I don't know. It was fun, but I could imagine with five other siblings doing the same thing, because you kind of end up being the cheerleader and roping everyone together. So, very fun.
Yeah, definitely.
That's exciting. Let's talk about your day job. What are your responsibilities as dean, and how many students are currently in your piano studio, and all things going on at Wayland? Give us some
Oh yeah.
information there.
Yeah, we're in a really exciting time now, actually. The Dean of Creative Arts, I'm responsible for media, graphic design, communications, art, music, all of these areas that sort of fall under this umbrella at Wayland. And we're in kind of this really energetic period where we're seeing some really great new kind of enrollment trends for especially things like graphic design. Our broadcasting program is doing some really incredible things. And obviously, being a musician, being a pianist, I'm excited to see where people go in that area. Wayland's known as a school that does really really good training for music teachers. We have for decades, and so we're excited to be working with our choir and band students and getting them ready to be the next choir band teachers all over the Panhandle. That's probably our biggest musical impact. I think you look around all of the high schools, middle schools, especially in the Panhandle, and it's amazing how many of them are Wayland graduates, Wayland connected people. It's really inspiring. And then piano wise, it's really remarkable. We've got, goodness, I don't know exactly, depends on sort of, we say enrollment is tentative until everybody actually shows up in the fall.
Sure.
But we've had really, really good interest. And I think I've had more piano students, last year than this next year, even more than I've had for quite a few years, especially since COVID. So we're finally seeing some of that, people returning there. And the nice thing about Wayland, being a small private school, is we get a mix of a lot of different kinds of students. We have a couple of students that are really interested in learning to perform and kind of getting their skills to the highest level, and other people that just love music and they have the ability to do music at the collegiate level. They're just not quite sure where they're going specialty wise, and so you just get to help them on that journey. And so most of my piano students, I think, would fall into that category. Have some, a couple of music minors, and some people that just love music, and they're science majors, they're English majors, right? And it's great to have the room to include them in the studio, which is a great blessing of a small school. So it's really fulfilling. It is a split appointment. My administrative work takes, as you might expect, most of the day,
Right.
with all of the things that go on with coordinating processes, making sure things work right, doing the personnel work and curricular work, all of those things. But I do have a half-time load as a teacher as well. So I'm really glad to stay in the studio, stay in the work with the students, do the performing work that I love to do. And so it's a neat life. It is never ever boring, for sure.
No, I think that's the greatest thing about higher education. I was visiting with a colleague the other day whose son is at West Point, and of course, the new plebes coming in as freshmen. Those kids were in sixth grade, or the end of sixth grade, when we all were shut down for COVID, and just some of the challenges and changes that college students are facing these days as entering freshmen in a university setting. So,
Yeah.
it's an interesting time. So, but it's great to hear though that Wayland is growing and that admissions is growing there, and students are interested in the creative arts for sure. So, are
Yeah.
you currently recruiting students for the piano studio? And explain to the novice parent or student out there how this process really works, because I know as a mom of a university student, that process 2.5 years ago, she's now entering her third year, it can be really intimidating. Even though 30 something years ago we went through the process, it's a whole different ballgame today. Talk about that, Richard.
Absolutely. It's a great question because you never quite see all of the processes that happen behind the scenes with these things. We're going through it ourselves, actually. Our daughter will be a senior in high school this coming year. And so, we're getting all the mailings and the email lists and all of these things. And for music, it's kind of unique because it is a rolling process. It's kind of like it's a new thing every year because, there's always folks that maybe we've worked with for a while. We've helped to teach some lessons in their middle school or high school years, and we keep that relationship going. And then other times it's just somebody whose name comes on a list and they're really interested in piano and they reach out and we have a good conversation, maybe a lesson, and go from there. But I guess I would say if there's an ideal process to it in terms of somebody that's thinking of, I love playing piano. I'd love to do that in college. I don't know if I want to major in it, right? I just love doing piano. Reaching out to your people there at your local university to say, let's have a lesson. Can I, go meet the piano professor, just talk about where my skills are at and where I might want to go and what some goals might be with that. If they are somebody who's interested in, a major, whether that's really thinking of loving like the performing side of the repertoire, getting into things, or just like, I play really well, I enjoy it. I want to see what the opportunities are because there's so many jobs, far beyond what you might think of as like somebody who plays in an orchestra or is playing recitals. The arts sector is such a dynamic field that degree in piano or in any instrument, can go in, infinite number of directions. There's so many employment opportunities there that I think, again, most schools are doing this really, really well now. I think Wayland does it exceptionally well of not just, you're taking lessons on all of these things, but we're talking about career preparation to say, when you graduate, what's next, right? How are you going to prepare for that job? How are you going to handle your tax liability? How are you going to do your
Right.
financial management and those things? So we talk about that a lot to parents and students that are coming through the recruiting process to make sure they know we're not just going to sit there and teach them lessons and then they get a degree in piano and go off on their way. It's like, no, you're getting a degree in piano, but really what you're doing is preparing for, wherever your interests take you and the opportunities take you, because you could end up as, the next CEO of Lubbock Symphony Orchestra, right? And there's so many places you could go with a music degree that are far beyond sort of the traditional pathways that were maybe kind of in the past decades. So we try to really emphasize that dynamic nature of things and just spark all kinds of interest in young students. But yeah, it is a really interesting process, and it does roll over anew every year. And we try to stay in contact with people and keep those relationships going. Because the biggest thing with recruiting, I think, is really having a relationship with the teacher, with the student, with the parents, with the family, so that they trust you to be a good teacher, yes, to share music well, to train them well, but also to be a good mentor and to work in a place that has the kind of environment that's going to nurture them and challenge them, yes, but also make sure that they're taking good care of them so that they flourish, become a great human being, move out into the field and really succeed that way. So it's based in piano, sure, but it's far beyond, just developing a specific skill.
Well, and I think that's what's great. And we see that even with the Lubbock Symphony Orchestra, the number of undergrads that play with our symphony, whether, they may be sitting second violin, last chair, and they may still be studying in Annie's studio, but their end game is to be a physician. They're headed to medical school. And
Absolutely.
we're celebrating our 80th season with the Lubbock Symphony Orchestra. You look at how the Lubbock Symphony started as the little Lubbock Symphony, and they were all volunteers at the time, and how we've shifted to a paid orchestra. And the Lubbock Symphony Orchestra is a big business. It's a $2.2 million budget, and we pay every single one of our musicians. But how is that sustainable in the future? You can't live solely on your Lubbock Symphony Orchestra gig. And I think that's what we're really trying to point out on these conversations is there is so much that goes into our principal pianist's life that this is just one component. And you're teaching that next generation that, yes, you can do this, 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 and this is how you piece it together, and the financial literacy piece of it. And yes, your self-employment taxes. And there's a whole lot more to this than just showing up for rehearsal on a Sunday or Monday night for the next 4 days, and then the concert on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night. It is a big business, and we're continuing to look at that at the symphony and how we do it better. So at this point, I'm going to wrap us up, and then we'll come back. So thank you for listening to Cliff Notes. Please join us next week as I continue my conversation with the Lubbock Symphony Edward and Joanne Smith principal pianist, Dr. Richard Fountain. Make it a great day. Thanks so much.